as we wanted it. If we just sort of reflect on the figures that we have been seeing and we as women political leaders so desperately want to change. I mean, we are still seeing a world where only 6% of heads of states are women, where only 5% of the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world are women, where only 25% of parliamentarians around the world are women. So we are still seeing—
Really voting for is to do this our way.
And on our terms.
Not on Canada's.
Where we are still seeing this humongous imbalance in power, and this is what we must change and will change. And we are still seeing, dear friends around the world, so not only these figures that we find hard to change, we are still seeing the visions in our mind. There are researchers that show that if we ask all of us to, for a brief second, close our eyes and picture a leader in our minds, 80% of us, even us, those on this call, will see a middle-aged white man. And this is what we need to change. We need to change the picture of a leader, not just the ones that are on the stage, but also in our minds. We need to see a diverse and balanced picture of people from around the world, and both women and men. So this, I think, is so really, really important. I would also like to mention what Helen mentioned in the brief introduction about the need for this conversation, not just to be amongst women that are in politics. I mean, this is women political leaders. We aim and strive to make sure that they have more power and that there are more of them. The number is higher. That's super important. But we also need to take that conversation more broadly into all sectors. Women need to be sort of writing the new normal by going across sectors. So this is why women political leaders have, in recent years, had what we call Reykjavik Global Forum, where we invite women leaders from all over the world to join us here in Iceland for a few days to make sure that we use, and the theme is always power together. We're trying to utilize our power together across continents, across countries, across sectors, from everywhere, to make sure that we unite in one voice, saying that we want to change, we need to change, and that change cannot be executed in any shape or form, and the new normal in building back to better cannot happen without women leaders being as vocal and as known, if you like, on the world stage and in general. So I think, being mindful of time, Helen, I'm seeing that we wanted to start the conversation with all of these great women that are online. I think I will call it a day from me here in Reykjavik, Iceland, and just join you for a conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hannah, and for stressing the importance of women leading and working across sectors. Of course, the political sector, the decision-making sector is very important, but so are all sectors to have women's input, participation, voices, commitment. So we're going to come to the Q&A part of the meeting, and can I remind everyone who's joined us that down the bottom of your screen you will see Q&A, and you can post a question there. We're going to try and deal with as many as we can, and some have come in before. There was an excellent question that I'm going to call up first that came from Somalia. Lucia, our support person at WPL, can you read the question from Somalia?
Sure, Chair. Yeah, we have received a question on behalf of the Ministry of Women and Human Rights Development of Somalia. And the question is, what are or can be strategies to increase women's participation in decision-making about COVID-19 response and recovery? Are there examples from other countries? And follow-up questions, what are opportunities to use WPL to exchange experiences on a more regular basis, including through this time of COVID-19?
So I'm going to allocate questions to our panelists, and I wondered whether, Hannah, sitting as you do with your global role at UN Women, whether you would have some observations to make about what UN Women is seeing with respect to how women are being included in decision-making around COVID-19, and how UN Women perhaps will be advocating for women to take a prominent role in the reset which should follow COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Helen. And I wish I could say that we were seeing this across borders and we were feeling and seeing that women were really sort of getting the power and the sort of influences we would be hoping. As Silvana mentioned in the beginning, the face of this pandemic has maybe been led when it comes to decision making way more in the picture of a man. But when we see the ones that are carrying the heavy burdens, as we have been mentioning, we're seeing the face of women. So I think we at UN Women, and I mean, I could say that I'm really, really sad because of this, but I'm also really hopeful because I think that the world is witnessing inequality, maybe in a way that we haven't had it as much in our face as we have right now. I think the general public is having that fairly in its face. We are seeing, for example, and we have been trying to do this within UN Women. We've been having roundtables, we've been having leaders talks and all kinds of events and initiatives around making sure that the voices of women are heard. And I would also say that the plus thing about this is, for example, I'm fairly proud to be a member of the UN family right now because I think we are striving to make sure this is happening. I think we are focusing again and again on the importance of gender equality around all of this. But sadly, we are also in sort of the less fortunate sort of, or some parts of the world where we are seeing inequality in a really, really immense and devastating way, if you like. You mentioned, Helen, I mean, the gender-based violence, the increase we are seeing there, and in all shape or form regarding education of girls around the world and so on and so forth. But we're also seeing that when female leaders get the opportunity to really lead and to decide how we're doing things, we're seeing positive effects. I mean, we've all been seeing the news around the world where we are taking up female leaders and saying they've done it in an excellent way. So we're seeing pluses and minuses, but to be really super transparent and frank, we within UN Women feel that there is a lack of female voices around all of this. And we think that the sort of cry and call for more gender equality is higher than ever, if you like.
Yes, so we're recognizing the truth that we wouldn't want to hear, but it's reality that women aren't as much to the fore as we would all like them to be, but that needs to strengthen our resolve to encourage women to step forward and encourage men to champion that as well. Now, the next very interesting question that came in was from Kenya. Lucia, can you read the Kenya question?
Sure, Chair. So Mary Seneta, Member of Parliament from Kenya, is putting forward a question. Countries with female leaders at the helm, such as Denmark, Norway, among others, have been recognized for their exemplary management of the COVID-19 pandemic. What lessons can we learn from these countries on the management of the disease? And a follow-up questions, what role can female leaders play in ensuring that countries work together to reduce the possibility of another pandemic in the future?
I'm going to call in Marie-Louise, the former president of Malta, to address that question based on her extensive leadership experience. Marie-Louise, would you like to tackle that one?
Yes, and in fact, I actually did mention the fact that, or rather brought in the experience of a number of women leaders, such as the New Zealand Prime Minister, the Icelandic Prime Minister, and Germany. A number, I actually mentioned them in my contribution, that the way they have tackled the pandemic is extremely commendable, and that is evidence to me how women leaders can be so effective. I also cited Professor Wrigley, a professor of psychology, who has written quite a lot about this, that the attributes, or rather the abilities of women in terms of even their soft skills of empathy, compassion, are attributes that are very important components, one could say, for leadership and management. And I do believe that we have enough evidence how much women can do and the ability that they have, and this is what is missing. We must. I am quite a direct person. Hannah has given a whole list of statistics of the inequalities that still reign supreme with regards to women representation and public life and managing economic operations and etc. And that is what's missing. I mean, the old recipe, I call it the old recipe, of having men there in numbers and everything. We must say it has failed. So we really know what needs to be done. We need gender equality all through the hierarchy, one could say, of our society and leadership. We need more women to bring in the change, to have more insight to things. I'm not saying that men do not have insight, but definitely women's perspectives are so important to be with men's perspective of how we look at things. And I have this conviction and sense of hope that with women, much more we need to be there in numbers. We can really bring in the change that is so needed for the global society, for the global society, for women and men, for girls and boys across the globe. We continue to perpetuate inequalities. We come so often as an international community, many a time under the umbrella of the United Nations. We commit ourselves to human rights. Our forefathers committed themselves, and foremothers committed themselves over 70 years ago to bring equality, to bring a sense of belonging, to bring human dignity to one and all. But then we fail. Then we have quite a number of instruments whereby the international community has agreed upon. The very latest, one could say, it was 5 years ago, the Sustainable Development Goals. But look at us today. We are still living in a world of so many inequalities. And what is lacking? What has to be different? The difference has to be that more women are at the helm in leadership, so that we can bring in these perspectives. We can bring in the holistic approach. We can be more compassionate and understand humanity and believe. And we have this belief, this inner belief. I have this experience of, as you all have, when we speak together, you can see that we bring in these details. We can see through things. We can feel. We can understand society so well. So I do think that women leadership is so much needed for the necessary change. We need to we need to look at the lessons learned from this very unprecedented period in the history of the world and do whatever we can so that new normal that we're talking about post-COVID-19 will usher in the necessary changes for a sustainable way of life that gives true and effective dignity to one and all across the globe.
Thank you, Marie-Louise, for your passion in answering that. We have another question that's come in. The African continent's been fantastic with questions. And we have one from Rwanda. Lucia, could you read that question, please?
Yeah, correct. We have Pelagie Wera, Miss Pelagie Wera, from member of the Senate of Rwanda, asking, to build in a new normal will require new strategies. What kind of best strategies do you propose, and do you think that it will work?
Maybe we should be asking Rwanda, which has the highest proportion of female legislators in the world. So what do they know that others don't? But Nur Hayati, I'd like to bring you in as a key panelist to tackle the question from the senator from Rwanda.
Okay, thank you, Helen. I think that I agree with the whole panelists to answer this question. I think that what we really miss is we should encourage ladies, women to be very active, to take an initiative, to use the social media. So to use the social media, because you know that you cannot expect that. We know that in the media mainstream, it's quite difficult. You know, sometimes that it's only what they need. I mean that we know that all profit organization, but we are WPL is a non-profit organization, and women usually they took more initiative in doing a social work. But now we should really encourage women to use the social media so we can exchange. So we know that's what's happening in the world, because social media, when we use that woman help women. I mean to make when it's something happen with the woman, so we can help them to make a viral, so the world knows about this. We know that we still need equality. It's still happening in everywhere, discrimination, especially this day when work from home. That I have one of friends who work from home, but then they work from home up to 3 a.m. in the morning. And then how that they can manage themselves. I mean that the work from home, they have to be still healthy. I mean that the working hours has to be still there. Doesn't mean that work from home that they do not recognize the limit of time. This is what women have to voice out. They have to use the social media, not only depending on media mainstreaming. So I really encourage all women. The strategy for us to eliminate the discrimination against women, we should be together. Like we said that together we are in power, we can do it. So we should do that, Helen. And we have you. We are proud to have you. We are proud to have Silvana, Hannah, Mary Louise. You know, we are here to be together to eliminate the discrimination against women, especially with our sisters in Rwanda, in Somalia. Let's use social media. It's not for only the millennial. Now they use the word millennial, but we are women. We are the millennial also. We have many girls to lead also. So this is what I suggest. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nuriati. Now we have some wonderful questions coming in online. Just before I come to those, could I ask Lucia to play the very short video from Rosalia Arteaga, who was president of Ecuador in 1997, and Rosalia serves on our board. It's pretty early in the morning in Ecuador, so she wasn't able to join live, but she has sent a few words. Lucia, are you ready to roll that video now?
Yes, 1 second.
1 second.
And I want to send my best wishes to the board of WPL. And I'm sorry that I cannot participate because of the difference hour. My main goal in life is to work on education. And I think this situation of coronavirus is putting us in front of some challenges. Challenges that has to do with how professors can move from the presential classes to other that are online classes. We have to work a lot on improve the quality of teaching online. The other big issue is the lack of tutors in terms of how rural areas can be part of this digital education if they don't have computers or they don't have also connection. This is the other big issue. In countries like mine, Ecuador, and most of countries of Latin America, the problem with the computers and the connection is big issue because also if a family have a computer, what's happening with teleworking of parents, and if they are 2 or 3 kids, how they can use at the same time the only computer that is at home. I think we have to work a lot, the governments and the NGOs and the local authorities also trying to make it in a better way to put computers all over the different houses, especially in rural areas and also in houses that people doesn't have the economy to support this and also the connection. But in our country, like countries like Ecuador, we have another problem that is what's happening with the use of jobs. People is not with jobs, and they are trying to prefer course food than education. And the situation of women is really bad because the parents prefer sometimes that the kids, the boys, go to school and the girls. The desertion of schools is a big problem also for families that are in this situation. I'm trying to improve this in my country and maybe in other countries by capacity building on teachers and also trying to to give the support for families.
Thank you. I think that's the end of the video, and I apologize. The sound quality wasn't very good. I had some difficulty hearing it in New Zealand. But look, wonderful questions coming in, so many. One I'm going to take first, Mary Gertie, who says, I'm afraid that when women will be working from home more, this will or might hinder their career prospects, as they are never, almost never in their place of work. I fear that this will result in a backward step for women. So I think Mary's probably referring to the fact that when you're out of sight, you can also be out of mind, which obviously is an issue. Another thing which young women with family at home have mentioned to me, you're trying to work, you've got little children around, the baby's demanding to be fed, the toddler is throwing things out the window. It does remind us that women who go to work in the formal economy, or indeed the informal economy, they need support with childcare. So I think, in response to Mary's questions, I think there are a number of issues about remote working for women, which need to be addressed seriously going forward. So thank you for that. Now, let me now come to some of the other issues. Lila from Monaco and Morocco says, how could we get in touch and exchange on a more regular basis so that this meeting could become a discussion in the long run? Well, I think that's something very much like women political leaders to obviously, it has been promoted quite heavily on social media, but of course, to have social media, you have to have connectivity. And we also recognize that there is a gender gap in connectivity. I have been involved before in a global commission on broadband access and on the gender inequities in broadband access. So that again tells us that as we shape a new future, broadband connectivity is going to be incredibly important. Now I've got a question from Azur. I'm back. I'm not sure how. From your perspective at UN Women advocating for women across all contexts, would you like to make any observations on how women who are displaced, internally displaced or as migrants, can be supported?
I'm so sorry, Helen, but we lost you, so I didn't hear the question. I sort of
Okay,
just heard, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so the question is on the Q&A, and
Mhm.
it's from Azerbaijan, and the question refers to within already vulnerable displaced communities, refugees and IDPs, women and girls.
I'm trying, Helen, because we lost you again. I'm thinking, can we put the question in the chat box so we can see?
Yeah, the question is in the Q&A. If you go into the Q&A function.
Yeah, because Helen, there is something with your connection, so you're in and out.
Mm.
Maybe it's the same for me. I don't know if it's the general thing.
So maybe Lucia can put it in the chat box.
Yeah.
Yes, it's there.
It's there now. Maybe let me type to Hannah.
Thank you. But maybe if somebody else heard it, they can come in if they heard the.
Are you hearing me now, Hannah?
Yes, I am. Your connection is way better now. Thank you, Helen.
Okay, so can you comment on the particular needs of women in humanitarian settings, women who are refugees and displaced?
Yeah. Thank you so much. And this is, of course, such an important issue, Helen, that you might be more familiar from your former work as well. I mean, the devastating thing about all of these, dear friends, the situation that we're facing now is that we seem to be seeing in a bad form, actually, that this is hitting the ones that we don't want this to hit hard, way harder than us. I mean, we can sit here all from across the world in front of our computer talking about the issues, but we have the connection, we have the homes, and we have the family around us, and so on and so forth. The ones that are facing more horror, if you like, we are worried that that will become even worse. We are seeing, and I don't know if you saw the prospects, for example, from the World Bank yesterday or the day before, is that all of these groups that you were mentioning that we have been trying to protect will be hit way harder than the rest of us. And that's the sad issue around all of this. So many of the things that we have been working around to make sure that we do better, that is the global community, when it comes to these women, will be hit hard. So I think not only is there a need, Helen, for us to sort of review what has been working and what we were aiming to do, but I think we need to do better. I think we need to put an extra emphasis on all of this. And I think if we are worried about the future, and somebody mentioned in the chat box earlier, I mean, is there a possibility, and this is what we're faced with everywhere, even in Iceland, where we are so fortunate in so many ways. Will this hit us harder in some shape or form? I mean, will this become sort of a deeper pandemic in some ways? And I think the worry here is that in views and sort of the tolerance of people towards inequality, this is what we're seeing in the States today. This is what we're seeing around the world, because racism isn't just a thing for the US of A, it's a thing for all of us. And I think that in these times, we are seeing that we will be not only hit harder, but it will sort of damage more. Sort of the inequality will be more visual, if you like. And this is why I'm being frank here in saying that I'm really, really worried about the groups that you were mentioning and how we are going to tackle that and make sure that we don't throw the success in some shapes that we've had way back in decades and years. This is why I'm I'm being really, really worried about this part. Yeah, and sorry for being so honest about that. I just think it's what we're faced with.
One organization I'm involved with called Women Deliver has been focusing on advocacy around getting more of the humanitarian response dollar for people and refugees and internally displaced situations, more of that dollar going to women. Because when you analyze how much of humanitarian response funding goes to women, it's pathetic. It's a tiny, tiny proportion. And, you know, I guess the answer will be, oh, well, it's mainstreamed. Well, unfortunately, mainstreamed often doesn't produce relevant programming to meet women's needs. So I think advocacy for that is very important. I have a very nice question here from Dr. Nadia Arop, Minister of Culture, Museum and Heritage from South Sudan. And the minister asks, what role could women leaders play to raise up the women in rural areas to take part in legislation or decision making, since their participation is so vital? Nuriati of Indonesia, you come from a country with a very large and dispersed rural population. Is that a question you would like to tackle?
Okay, thank you, Helen. You are right. You know that as you know that we are a huge country with more than 16,000 islands in its population. Then I think that this is a very important question. And thank you for student. Sorry. Yeah.
Carry on.
Yes. So I think that at this time, what we really need. Helen, sorry, can you repeat just the question itself? Sorry.
Yeah, the question is, in essence, how can we make sure that the women in the rural areas are included in the decision making going forward? How can they participate?
Okay, because as I mentioned before in my presentation, that we do have you know that within quota and not quota is still being a discussion, but I think what it's need to be done, it's for developing country, we need to have a quota, because without quota we cannot push a woman to be in the decision making. We are lucky in Indonesia, we have 30% quota. Now we have a mayor, woman as a mayor, we have woman as a governor. So I think that the legislation that we should really put a quota to women. And in the rural area, we do have, I have a lot of friends in the rural area as a medical doctor, of course. They're also women. So we support them as sitting in the political party. I support them to run for the decision making. I mean, as a mayor, as the governor, we should do that, because without our involvement, that women are not having the chance. I mean, because if they have to compete with the men, you know, in all the decision making, that we need finance. That's why the most important that we should help women, support women to have access to finance. I'm proposing at that time I keep saying this in OECD, with the World Bank, with the IMF. I said that with all the bankers also, please provide loan for the women who are running in the as a mayor. You know that women are good, they will pay, but this should be access to finance has to give to the woman, especially when they run to the election. It's difficult for a woman who has no finance to sit in the decision-making policy. This is what's the most important. That's why I really wish that these women political leaders global forum we have Hannah, we have Silvana, we have you and Mary, Helen, that we always has to influence the bankers, especially at this pandemic. You know that the men lose their job, homeless people, and then that they should do something for not only women, for everybody. With for instance, that when they have deposit, there should be no no penalty for when they want to withdraw the deposit. And then also the loan, they should do this because women need finance, and the most important for women are access to finance. This is what my own experience, and you know that women should work 3 times than a man to be able to recognize. So this is we should not do this anymore. We should work together and hand in hand to let women sit in the decision-making policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurayati. Now, we've been joined by another of our board members of World Political Leaders, and she is Her Excellency Jewel Howard-Taylor, the Vice President of Liberia and President of the Senate of Liberia. And I'd like to bring you in now, Jewel, if you're able to make the contribution you were going to make to us. So we're all ears to you, I guess, in Monrovia, Liberia.
And thank you for this opportunity. I'm sorry I was a little late. I was a little confused about what was happening at what time. But I wanted to say again, thank you for coming up with this topic. What do we do as leaders to ensure that women are elected? I've had the opportunity to be a part of an electoral process more than 3 times. And from what I can put on the table this morning as the most important thing is not just financing. Financing is an issue, but if women make up more than 50% of the voting population in most countries, why aren't women electing women leaders? And I think that is the crux of it, because you could have all of the funding and the women in your constituency or in your local government could decide they will support a man as opposed to supporting a woman candidate. And I think that is the bottom of where we are. How can we get women to understand that when you have even just one voice in a position of trust and leadership, it changes the entire scope of what happens. And Madam Helen Clark will tell you that from her leadership as Prime Minister of New Zealand, that just being a female at the top shifted a lot of things that needed to be shifted. So as we talk about financing, I don't know if there will be any bank or any micro credit organization that will give money to women to go and get elected, because they don't know whether we're going to get elected or not. And then if you don't get elected, how do you pay that funding back? So I think we need to backtrack a little bit. Here in Liberia, we've tried over the past 14, 15 years, even when Madam Sirleaf was president, to get the quota bill passed. We sent it through the legislature more than 5 times. In the end, the men is a purely male, 99% male dominated legislature, said, wait until we do the constitutional review and we'll find a way to put what the women want in the Constitution, so it doesn't become just an arbitrary law that can be, reversed. And we agreed to wait. And when the constitutional review process ensued about a year ago, everything was trashed out of the legislature on the streets into the dustbin. And I think that was my saddest moment as not just a vice president, but a female politician. But we've lost seats in the legislature, and so we don't have the point where women can actually come together as members of the legislature and push anything that's important for women. So I think as we look at the new normal, as we look at what's happening across our own world, as we look at the fact that women leadership actually at the highest level does bring the changes that we would like to see, our question is, how do we get women elected? And I think we must begin at the feet of every woman. What does she understand? A woman who is elected, what is the role of that woman who gets elected? What are the changes that she brings to bear if she has a leverage that allows her to make the final decisions? There are women in the 2nd and the 3rd tier levels, but they're not the final decision makers. And so you can talk, you can do all of what you would like to do, and you can make the noise. In the end, the final decisions are made by the male members of our governance systems. In the end, they do what they like to do. So we're still at the back burner. We must find a way to begin to talk to women. Maybe we need to do a She for She campaign. How do we get out the message of how important just one person is? And why should women coalesce around other women so that we get more women elected in the places where it matters, whether it's at the presidency, whether it's at the legislature, whether it's getting women in the judiciary so that the laws can change to reflect our views and our values and what we would like to see. We must go back to that She for She campaign, if it's possible to put such a campaign together so that all of us can go back to the bottom of the barrel and begin to talk to each woman in all of the space that we operate in so that they can change their minds and realize that we are an asset to them. But that asset needs support. That asset needs to be elected when the time comes. That asset needs to be functional in a way where changes can actually take place. And the most important place is at the presidency, but also at the legislature, because that's where the laws that protect, the laws that provide, the laws that ensure our rights are adhered to are done. And so it's not just all about financing, it's also about the framework of our women, as you find in different spheres, whether you're on the African continent, where women still feel they don't have a voice, or where you're at the United States, where women do have a voice, but then they still haven't managed to elect a female president. So it's a very tall order, but I think we must keep marching on, we must keep moving, we must keep working, but then where there are gaps, let's look at where those gaps are and see how we can actually fill in the gaps that will help us actually push the issues that we're talking about. In COVID-19, you can only imagine that women are again being marginalized. They're not able to get out, especially at the lower levels, to seek food or whatever needs are for the families. A lot of female heads of households exist across our spheres, and women are now responsible to take care of children. They're on a lockdown in most places. How are those families even surviving? How do we get to them? It's not about sending a meal, every once in a while. It's about empowering them so that in instances where there is a shock to the full system, then they have some savings or they have something that they can do to allow them to earn some income so that they're able to sustain their families. So I think, at the first intervention, these are my initial thoughts.
Thank you so much, Vice President of Liberia, for those many very constructive ideas, and great to have you on the symposium summit tonight. I know that we're about 3 minutes away from the time for ending this event. Have some lovely questions there, and one suggestion I would like to make is that if we haven't got to your question, please send it to us via social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter at Helen Clark NZ, Instagram. So are others of our speakers. So please feel free to message us and we'll do our best to respond. There was one that came in from Sweden, which looked at the broader environmental issues that are so pressing at the moment. And of course, one of the issues that's been talked about a lot is the issue of the illegal wildlife trade, and how when illegal wildlife are trafficked and end up in markets for human consumption, that in itself can be a vector for the spread of these animal to human transmission zoonotic diseases. So our questioner asked, and it's a long question that's on the Q&A screen, whether women leaders might be prepared to take the lead in supporting and initiating an international ecocide law. So I just put that on the table for our women leaders to consider, although we don't have time to answer it in full tonight. What I would say is that we do need to look at the issues now holistically, because we have these simultaneous crises. The biodiversity crisis is one, climate change another, and we've talked about the others, the health crisis with the pandemic, the inequality crisis, et cetera. So having women's perspectives across these issues is absolutely critical. And while we rightly focus a lot on the social protection and the health and the education, which is so critical. I want to see women's voices on all the issues. So thank you to the Swedish participant for raising the great importance of that. So I'm also told that questions can be sent to WPL Global Webinar at wpleaders.org. That's too much probably for people to remember, but go into the Women Political Leaders website. There'll be a contact function there, and the questions can also be sent there. So with those words, and noting the questions have come in from everywhere, some great ones from New Zealand, from Montenegro, from another one from Liberia as well. We can't deal with them in the time that we have now, but thank you to everyone. The recording is going to be available. It will be posted on social media for Women Political Leaders, and that's probably where most of you heard about the event. So the full recording of the event will be available. And I repeat again, we're very happy to answer the questions if you can get them through to us. The recording will be available on the Women Political Leaders website, also on YouTube, and on some SOM capital Z social media. I'm trying to decode the acronyms here. Thank you, panelists, for making time to come in from around the world, from Liberia to Malta to Indonesia to Hannah sitting in Reykjavik, and our Women Political Leaders team, mainly sitting in Brussels and in Belgium at the heart of the European Union. And thank you everyone for participating and making today a very, very interesting digital summit, which I'm going to thank you all again and wish everyone a good night or a good day wherever you are at the present time. Thank you, and over and out. Thank you.